Last week, we discussed the flip side of standards: failure. But there is one area in which schools not only succeed but excel: indoctrination into conformity. This week, I thought it was time to talk about the most current events concerning parents and their school-aged children, the National School Board Association, the Attorney General, and the intense media propaganda machine. Boy, those are words I never thought I'd be stringing together in a single sentence. So let's quickly recap what we've been seeing in some news coverage on mainly alternative media regarding what has been happening at the school board meetings across the nation. Parents speaking about policies and practices they consider to be detrimental to their children, implemented by the rogue school boards who hold themselves more accountable to unions than to parents. And the righteous opposition is appearing with more frequency and greater intensity, putting school board members on notice, even serving lawsuits. What seems to be concerning parents in the curricula? It can be summed up in the acronyms: BLM for Black Lives Matter, CRT for Critical Race Theory, the 1619 Project's Revisionist History, and CSE for Comprehensive Sex Education. In my book, Words for Warriors, we define BLM as a global political organization born in 2013 out of the leftists' insistence that America is systemically racist. Enraged by the deaths of Black individuals Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, the movement found resonance in the mainstream media. It calls for nonviolence, even while inciting riots. Without offering a better system, BLM advocates for the wholesale destruction of Western civilization, starting with tearing down statues of famous Southerners or well-known slave owners, but never stopping there. They tore down the statues of Civil War hero General U.S. Grant and Frederick Douglass, a Black man who fought hard against slavery and for the empowerment of Black individuals. Several protests organized by this group ended up with rioting and looting. The BLM website statement of faith is this: "We are unapologetically Black in our positioning. We've committed to struggling together and to imagining and creating a world free of anti-Blackness. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another. We foster a queer-affirming network." They are communist at root, which positions them as antithetical to America. Their website describes them as comrades who focus solely on anti-Black racism and power. Critical race theory sounds like a fascinating, reasonable study of human behavior, but that would be expecting way too much. While you can find professors who maintain that CRT is a highly sophisticated intellectual and social movement, it is still based on the premise that natural biological race is a social construct invented to exploit people of color, yes, especially Black people. You probably already noticed the conundrum here, right? How can they claim race is an unjustifiable, invented concept, but then use race to delineate people from each other? And yes, isn't that inherently racist? In my book, Words for Warriors, we define CRT as follows. Noun: the theory that for white people, there is no escaping their inborn racism, and their guilt and bloody hands disqualify them from holding any positions of power unless they are approved of by a governing, read Marxist, body. CRT blames crime on the system, that if there were no laws, there would be no lawbreakers. Of course, this is true, but it kind of defeats the purpose, which is to uphold right and wrong. That's why we've seen so many CRT supporters also in strong favor of defunding the police. To hold someone accountable for misdeeds is not racist. It's just common sense. President Donald J. Trump had this to say about CRT. Students in our universities are inundated with critical race theory. This is a Marxist doctrine, holding that America is a wicked and racist nation, that even young children are complicit in oppression, and that our entire society must be radically transformed. A perfect example of critical race theory was recently published by the Smithsonian Institution. This document alleged that concepts such as hard work, rational thinking, and the nuclear family, and belief in God were not values that unite all Americans, but were instead aspects of whiteness. Trump speaks about this kind of ideology or religion being present in our universities. But, of course, we now see firm evidence of it in our grade schools, mainly because teachers in our schools graduated from the university institutions. Well, what did you expect? Especially if the teachers truly buy into the false philosophy. The thrust of the CRT creed is that the oppression of blacks itself originates in the very structure of our Western society, that we are culturally racist. Therefore, the cure is to destroy it all. Well, then what? Once we destroy everything, how can we usher in freedom and equality, especially when it's untethered from the Bible? Because, rest assured, CRT does not uphold biblical truth. They propose to eliminate all unjust hierarchies, but what do they plan to replace them with? Ostensibly, every hierarchy to them would be unjust, even one expressly established to promote freedom and equality under the law. And yet, one does get the impression they believe the only just hierarchy to be the one they rule. Now, let's not forget that CRT proponents choose to believe that options are finite and that outcome is fixed. It's a debilitating, a crippling mindset to inflict on a child, for which the results will necessarily be outward anger and frustration, and not to mention inward hostility toward themselves.
I have 3 children. They are not oppressed either, although they are victims. I've taught my children they are victims of 3 things: their own ignorance, their own laziness, and their own poor decision making. That is all. My children, we are not victims of America. We are not victims of some unseen 190-year-old force that kind of floats around in the ether. Putting critical race theory into our classrooms is taking our nation in the wrong direction. Racism in America would by and large be dead today if it were not for certain people and institutions keeping it on life support. And sadly,
in my book, I define many of the terms bandied about in political discussions with an aim to clarifying them for people who spend their time in more creative or productive endeavors. The enemies of the United States seem intent on disparaging and destroying our very language by perverting its meanings and deflating the values of the words. The more you carelessly throw around a term, the more you misuse and overuse it, the less meaning or impact it carries. One of the terms I cover in the book is racist, because in this culture we so easily call someone racist for merely smiling the wrong way at someone of a different skin color. Forgive me. I mean, we easily call white people racist. People of color, by the new definitions, cannot be racist. And if you think that sounds a bit racist, well, that's probably because it is.